We've encountered some bizarre creatures in the estate. The place is truly a mecca of madness. Creatures of all kinds seem to flock to this land, but there are a few that stand out to us. These ones are something beyond the reanimated corpses or the brigands we encounter. They are beings beyond our understanding or reason. They have existed for thousands of years, since the dawn of time and creation. Before, when only darkness surrounded the universe, there existed beings with such power and influence that to them, humanity was as insignificant as a mosquito. The Darkest Dungeon universe is dripping with Lovecraftian influences, from the enemies to the characters to the story itself. Lovecraft was well known for his cosmic horror beyond our understanding and reasoning as humans, with the belief that we are insignificant to these beings with powers to end our existence at a moment's notice, that we're just a small piece of a massive universe that they inhabit. Because of how many entities there were, this would lead to the classification system in the Cthulhu Mythos. The three main categories are the Outer Gods, the Great Old Ones, and the Elder Gods. The Outer Gods are beings that live in the farther regions of space and exert their influence on Earth, although some have been known to come to Earth to reside. The Great Old Ones have been on Earth since the beginning, and once ruled over it before they returned to their slumber. And finally, the Elder Gods. They were originally the lords of the Great Old Ones, but cast them, along with Earth, out of the dimension they resided in after the Great Old Ones rebelled. The classification system is not set in stone, and there is still some debate on where many of these deities truly reside, since lines tend to blur. And since Darkest Dungeon is set in its own universe, within its own mythos, these terms may not be 100% accurate, but they'll work for our purposes. So what does this mean for the creatures we encounter in-game? Well, including DLC and possible theories, we encounter a few of these creatures that fall into one of the three categories. I've ranked them in order of perceived power and impact in the world. Before we begin, I want to mention a few things. I'll mostly be covering things that are related to cosmic or ancient creatures. I purposely left off the fungal monsters in the Weald, since those were made by the Hag. Same thing with the swine folk, those were made by the Ancestor. So with that out of the way, let's begin. At the bottom of the pecking order, but with the largest area claimed, is the pelagic fishmen. Based on the Ancestors' dialogue, these creatures have existed under the sea for thousands of years, having their own culture, civilization, and religion. They continue to add to their numbers by infecting humans with a pelagic curse, turning them into fishmen who are drawn to the sea. The low ranking is because we never see the full extent of their powers. We only see a small fraction of their forces, but hopefully, in Darkest Dungeon 2, we get to see more of what they're capable of. Next is something that only appears when our packs are full of loot, almost as if he can smell the gold and treasure we carry. The Collector is still an enigma, but we do have a few theories. One is that he collects the souls of those who have died in the estate, either in the past or in an alternate timeline, and he continues to hunt for more. Another theory is that since he's listed as human eldritch in the enemy type, it could be that he's an avatar in service of something greater than himself. In combat, he releases the heads of those he has collected and drops to the back row, forcing our party to fight with their enslaved counterparts. If he is defeated, he has a chance of dropping one of the heads of those he has collected, along with some gems that change color with the light. He's located on the lower end of the scale, because once he's defeated, the resurrected heads disappear with him. meaning that he is more of a puppet master than a combatant. On the other end of the spectrum is a creature that relishes in combat. The Shambler is something that also lurks in the shadows, but he could also be summoned should the party plunge a torch into its altar, like the thrice-damned Myuu. The Shambler appears and sucks the party into its own dimension, a place between worlds where no mortal was meant to see. Much like the Collector, it also summons allies to combat. In this case, it summons its own spawn to assist in the battle. But unlike the Collector, the Shambler takes a much more active role in the combat, applying bleed and blight damage, as well as shuffling the party with its attacks. Based on the dialogue you hear when you encounter and defeat it, it comes from the stars, meaning we could place this creature in the Outer Gods category, and it is currently visiting Earth. Although what it could be doing or seeking in this land is unknown. Now it's time for some crazy theory and speculation. Remember when I mentioned the Elder Gods, and how they were once the lords of the great old ones? Well, the most common description of them is as terrific towers of flame. And what does the church worship? The eternal flame. And one thing that is interesting about the Elder Gods is that they tend to be remembered as gods of ancient cultures. So it's my theory, the flame is actually an elder god who resides in another dimension and is allowing humans to tap into their powers to fight back against the evils within the estate. It only chooses those who are most pure, like the vessels, to grant its power. But I don't think these elder gods are truly benevolent. They could just be using humanity to wage their war from another dimension. Why I placed it here is because it's still just a theory, and it's not without its flaws. But I don't think anyone can deny that the flame and the light possess a level of power and influence in the world. Speaking of theories, here's one involving the Crimson Court. It's my theory that the blood itself is a living entity and that it has a connection to the Heart of Darkness. When the ancestor defeated the Countess, drained her blood, and served it to members of court, the curse spread to new hosts. Just a single drop of this blood gifted the ancestor with a vision of the Heart of Darkness. It could be the blood of the heart that has leaked out into the world. At the end of the Crimson Court DLC, we are given the option to return to the court again. This time, we don't fight a member of the court. Instead, we fight the Garden Guardian, the physical embodiment of the blood that has been corrupted even further by the land and the Heart of Darkness. The Guardian isn't alive, more like it's being puppeteered by the blood. The Countess was acting as a vessel for the curse, possibly for centuries, feeding on humanity to sate her desires. Or maybe she was there. She could have witnessed the heart being sealed away. And so we come to the last two major powers in the estate. And when we examine these two a little closer, we see that they share a lot of similarities. I'm of course referring to the Heart of Darkness and the Sleeper. Both are the leaders of their respective factions, and both slowly morph their followers to reflect their own image. The husks in the farmstead gain a healthy cyan glow, and the cultists in the manor look more flesh and organ-like. Both have an avatar to act as conduits for their power. The Sleeper has the Miller, and the Heart has the Ancestor. But what about the differences? Well, one came from the stars, while the other was sealed within the earth, making one an outer god and the other a great old one. The Miller is the unwilling avatar to the Sleeper, while the Ancestor most likely gave it to the Heart of his own accord. But the most significant difference between the two is the level of impact that they have on the world around them, and the different forms of time manipulation they possess. The Sleeper doesn't have too much impact on the world outside of the farmstead. It has the thing that came from the stars that roams the estate, but that's about it. Inside the farmstead, it has complete control over space and time, resetting the area and summoning creatures from across dimensions to fight on its behalf. Even after we defeat it, it just resets, and the farmstead is exactly the same as the next time we walk into it. The Heart, on the other hand, has a massive influence on the world around it. The cultists who roam around the estate worship it, and its ability to corrupt the land and creatures extend to other eldritch monsters like the Shambler. The sheer knowledge and sight of such a being is enough to break a person's mind. Our heroes will even refuse to return to the manor after they've seen what lies inside. And should they be forced to return, it causes them massive amounts of stress. But the most interesting effect it has is on us. After we complete the first expedition into the manor, we start to notice things around the state are different. According to the ancestor, our eyes are opened, and we are beginning to see the world as it truly is. Based on the ancestor's dialogue when we finally encounter the Heart, it's implied that it is the creator of humanity, and its move, "Come unto your maker," further indicates that this is the creator of all things. The Heart's ability to manipulate time isn't as clear as the Sleeper's, but it's my belief that it is far more powerful. It all ties to the ending of the game. It's my interpretation that even should we succeed in our quest to defeat the Heart, it's pointless. That even after we have slain all the bosses, navigated all the dungeons, and sacrificed our heroes to the Heart, we still won't be able to win. At the end, when the Heart is about to die, we see all of our work and progress undone. Through the ancestor's eyes, we see him send the letter to us, the heir, and take his own life. It resets time, back to when we first arrived to the estate. The ghosts we see in the woods are us, from the previous times we have managed to stop the Heart. When we activate Blood Moon, or Stygian, which was originally New Game Plus, there's a special curio that replaces the Brigand's tent on the old road. It's called the Transcendent Tear, and should we interact with it, we receive a cryptic message. Time, an endless cycle. These two modes also feature a failure condition. After enough heroes have died, or enough weeks have passed, whichever one comes first, the game will end. When either enough blood or time has been sacrificed to fully awaken the Heart and bring with it the end of the world. Despite our best efforts, the best we can hope for is stalemate. The Heart will keep resetting the world until it finally wins. Of course, that's just my interpretation. The ending is vague to allow players to interpret it however they wish. Everyone's experience with the events is up to their own perspective. Maybe the Sleeper is actually the one resetting time. It could detect when the Heart awakens and resets the world out of self-preservation. Maybe the Heart is actually defeated and it returns to its slumber. We become the next ancestor who repeats the same mistakes of the previous one and must send a letter to the next heir. Maybe we did kill the Heart and brought Armageddon to the rest of the world. Maybe it's all just the fever dream of the caretaker. We don't know. Only time will tell what the current state of the Hamlet and the rest of the world is. And maybe we can find a glimmering of hope in that world. If you have your own theory about the ending, tell us about it in the comments. The next couple of hero lores are going to be a little delayed. Life stuff, you know how it goes. But hopefully, I can start releasing content more regularly and scheduled. Until then, thank you for watching.